Oh, 112 points for Indiana. It is now at the stage where the way teams are defending Caitlin Clark is just not working. It's just
112 points. Say that number out loud and let it sit there for a second, because that is not a video game score. That is not a college blowout against a mid-major. That is a professional WNBA team playing against a professional defensive scheme, being absolutely dismantled while every single person on that opposing bench was doing everything humanly possible to stop it from happening. And here is the part that should genuinely disturb you if you are a fan of any team that has to face Indiana this season. Portland did not lose that game because they played bad defense. They lost it because they played some of the most aggressive, most creative, most suffocating Caitlin Clark coverage we have seen all year long. Full court denial, hard double teams off every single screen, deliberate fouling as a tactical weapon. Every tool in the defensive playbook deployed all at once. And Indiana still hung 112 on them. So the question sitting in the middle of this conversation right now is not whether teams are trying hard enough to stop her. They are trying. They are absolutely trying. The question is whether the problem has already moved beyond the reach of conventional answers, and what that means for every team that still has to see her in a playoff setting. Drop a comment right now. Tell me honestly, do you think any coach in this league has a real answer, or is this already over? Because after what we are about to break down, your opinion on that might change completely. Subscribe my channel Clark Spotlight for more WNBA updates.
like Portland kind of threw everything at Caitlin. They threw everything at Caitlin. And she still had a 26-point triple-double.
Before we get into the tactical details of what Portland specifically tried to do, let us zoom out for just a moment and appreciate the scale of what Indiana has been building over the last 2 weeks, because the context makes everything else hit harder. The Indiana Fever have been averaging 110 points per game across a 5-game winning streak. That number alone is worth pausing on. We are not talking about one explosive outlier performance that skews an average upward and makes things look prettier than they are. We are talking about 5 consecutive games where Indiana has crossed or approached that threshold against teams that knew exactly what was coming and tried to prepare for it. The offensive consistency is not a coincidence. It is not luck. It is a system that has found its rhythm at the exact moment that everyone else in the league was hoping it would stall. And the reason that rhythm has been so difficult to disrupt comes down to a concept that gets talked about a lot in basketball, but rarely gets illustrated this clearly in real time. When a defense makes the decision to overcommit entirely to one player, to funnel every resource, every rotation, every defensive decision through the singular goal of taking that one player out of the game, it does not just affect that player. It collapses the entire defensive structure from the inside out. You pull 2 defenders toward one woman, and suddenly the geometry of the entire half court is wrong. Suddenly players who were covered are open. Suddenly the kick-out pass that should have had a hand in its face has nothing but air between it and the net. It is a domino effect, and Indiana has been knocking those dominoes over in 5 consecutive games now. What makes this particular moment in the season so fascinating is that it feels like the rest of the roster has grown into the spacing and the reads at exactly the right time. Early in the year, the concept was there, but the execution lagged just enough for defenses to recover. The rotations were slightly late. The catch-and-shoot decisions carried a half-beat of hesitation. That window has closed. The Fever are punishing teams for every defensive gamble with a speed and precision that was not quite there 12 months ago. But to truly understand why coaches are running out of options, you need to see what Portland specifically cooked up, because they brought something to this game that we genuinely had not seen before.
Alex Sarama. I mean this. There is nobody that has put more quote-unquote respect on guarding Caitlin Clark than Sarama did today. First of all, they hacked her. They hacked her. But I'm just going to show you guys what they were doing in the full court and the half.
Alex Sarama and the Portland coaching staff walked into that game with a clear philosophical statement. They were not going to allow Caitlin Clark to play basketball in any kind of comfort. Not at half court, not at the three-point line, not even at the opposite end of the floor after a made basket. The commitment to disrupting her started the moment the ball went through the net on the other end, and it did not stop until the final buzzer. What Portland deployed in the full court was something that took a few possessions to even fully register for people watching. Off-made baskets, as Indiana set up to inbound, Portland positioned their defenders so that the player responsible for the inbounder was simultaneously cutting off Clark's immediate catch space. They were not simply guarding Clark in a man-to-man sense. They were occupying the airspace around her, making it physically impossible for the inbound pass to reach her cleanly without a secondary action first. Indiana had to completely redesign how they initiated possessions, pulling secondary guards across to give the ball handler an outlet just to get the play started. That kind of full court commitment carries a real cost for the team deploying it. When you send that much energy and positioning toward one player before the ball even crosses half court, you're gambling your defensive balance for the entire possession on the idea that the disruption will pay off. It is a high-risk opening move. And for Portland, it was also only the first layer of a much more elaborate scheme that was waiting for Clark once the ball actually got into the front court. The sheer audacity of what Portland was attempting is worth acknowledging for a moment, because we have not seen this level of systematic full-court attention directed at Clark in quite this way before. Most teams choose their defensive battles and pick a spot to apply pressure. Portland decided to apply it everywhere, all at once, for 40 minutes. The respect embedded in that decision is almost backhanded. It is the kind of defensive attention that tells you a team is genuinely frightened of what happens if they give her even one moment of comfort. But the full court pressure was just the opening move, because once the ball crossed midcourt, Portland had something else entirely waiting.
I mean this. Off scores, this was what the FIFA were doing. So Kelsey was here, Caitlin was here, and this is something that I've never seen them do till today, and this is obviously something they practiced. So what they did was, whoever is on the inbounder is standing in front of Caitlin, they're standing here as well. So they are a full court on Caitlin Clark. They're not.
Half-court defense against Caitlin Clark presents coaches with a set of choices that all feel like they lead somewhere bad, and what Portland chose was arguably the most extreme option available to them. Every single time Clark came off a ball screen, Portland was running a hard, aggressive hedge where the primary defender pushed her high and wide above the screen, while the screener's defender immediately launched out to meet her with a second body. Not a soft show, not a quick switch. A full, committed, suffocating double team that held its position regardless of what Clark did next. And the remarkable part of the scheme was the rigidity of it. Most trapping coverages give the defense permission to recover once the ball handler retreats or gives up the drive. The defending players peel back, reset, and the possession continues in a more standard structure. Portland did not give their players that permission. If Clark retreated all the way back toward the midcourt logo with two defenders attached to her, those two defenders stayed attached. They held the cage. The trap was not a moment. It was a permanent condition applied to every possession that involved a ball screen for Clark, regardless of the shot clock, regardless of the score, regardless of how tired the defenders executing it might have been. This level of preparation does not happen spontaneously. You cannot improvise a scheme this rigid and this consistent in the heat of a game. Portland had clearly spent significant practice time drilling these exact coverages, walking through the rotations and the responsibilities until every player understood their role without needing to look for instruction. The fact that they maintained this level of discipline for the opening half of the game, even as Indiana started to find some answers, speaks to how seriously Sarama treated this matchup. For Clark, the experience of operating inside this scheme must have been genuinely uncomfortable in a way that not many defenders have been able to manufacture this season. Two bodies in your personal space every time you tried to initiate off a screen, with no clean look developing, and the ball being funneled away from your hands at every opportunity. It was sophisticated, it was physical, and it was clearly the product of real homework. But here is where the math of the game started to turn against everything Portland had built. When you send two defenders to stop one player, you are making a trade. You are accepting that somewhere else on the floor, your defense has a hole, a gap that exists precisely because you make.
So, every single time Caitlin came off a screen, it was not a switch, it was not a hedge, it was literally, whoever Caitlin's player is, we are pushing Caitlin above the screen. And this player is coming out to here to meet Caitlin, and then we're getting around the screen. And Caitlin could be retreating toward the halfway line. It does not matter. We are holding the trap. At all times,
Made the decision to concentrate resources in one spot. For most teams facing most players, that trade is worth it. The disruption you create by trapping the star outweighs the occasional open look that leaks out on the weak side. The math works in your favor. Against Indiana right now, that math is broken. Completely, catastrophically broken. Every time Portland committed both defenders to that trap on Clark, the Fever instantly had a 4-on-3 situation developing on the opposite side of the court. 4 Indiana players, 3 Portland defenders trying to cover them. And the reads Clark was making to find the open player in that scenario were not the slow, methodical reads of someone thinking through the geometry. They were instant. The pass was already coming out of her hands before the defense could rotate into position. The hockey assist, the pass to the player who finds the open teammate, was happening so fast and so cleanly that Portland's rotations had no realistic chance of recovering. In her rookie year, this same basic scenario played out differently. Teams were blitzing Clark off ball screens all the way back then, and Indiana was not consistently punishing it. The reads were there in concept, but the execution had a half-beat of lag that gave defenses just enough time to scramble back into position. The spacing was still unfamiliar. The timing between Clark and her teammates had not fully developed into the kind of automatic trust that makes these sequences look effortless. That version of Indiana no longer exists. The hesitation is gone. Aaliyah Boston in the mid-post, Kelsey Mitchell on the wing, Katie Lou Samuelson at the top of the key. Every one of those players has internalized the reads and the spacing to the point where the 4-on-3 exploitation is essentially automatic. Clark does not need to force it. She does not need to manufacture the advantage. Portland hands it to her every possession, and she delivers it with the calm precision of someone who has run this play 1,000 times in practice. But when Portland realized the pass was coming, they made a very specific and very telling decision about what to do next. There is a moment in every tactical battle when a team realizes their original plan has been neutralized, and they have to pivot to something else in real time. For Portland in that game, the pivot was stark and unmistakable once you knew what you were watching. When the trap stopped generating turnovers and started generating wide-open looks for Indiana, Portland's defensive approach shifted from trying to prevent good shots to trying to prevent Clark specifically from ever building any kind of offensive momentum. The method was direct. If Clark turned the corner on a drive, if she split the trap, if she somehow created separation, the priority for the nearest Portland defender was not to recover into position and play the ball. It was to get a body on her, take the foul, make her go to the line and stand there and wait instead of flowing directly into the next action. Turn a basketball game into an interruption contest, one whistle at a time. The Holly Winterburn sequence is the clearest example of this philosophy in action. Clark came off a play, got the ball back, and drove toward the basket. Winterburn was a fraction late in the rotation, and rather than attempt to cut Clark off at the spot and compete for the block or the deflection, Winterburn angled her body across the driving lane in a way that telegraphed the intention before contact was even made. She was not trying to stop the shot. She was trying to draw a blocking foul call and interrupt the sequence entirely. What happened instead was a masterclass in real-time processing. Clark read the body language, saw the angle changing, and converted the moment into a one-leg foul draw that sent her to the line and neutralized Winterburn's entire recovery effort in the same motion. She did not fight the foul. She used it. The tactical weapon being deployed against her became a tool she redirected back at the defense. This speaks to something that goes beyond athleticism or shooting mechanics. Reading a defender's intention mid-drive and adjusting the entire play accordingly in a fraction of a second is a cognitive skill that very few players at any level possess with that kind of reliability. Portland was banking on disrupting her rhythm. Instead, they were handing her free throws and resetting the possession on her terms. But even with the free throw strategy failing, Portland had one more layer they were willing to try. Here is the thing about a defensive scheme as aggressive and as rigid as what Portland was running. It has a ceiling. When you commit that completely to one coverage principle, you become predictable in a very specific way. And predictable defenses, no matter how physically demanding or technically sophisticated they might be, eventually get solved by smart offenses. Indiana found the solution, and when they found it, it was almost elegant in its simplicity. The Caitlin Clark and Katie Lou Samuelson screen and pop combination became the answer that Portland had no clean response for. The action worked like this. Clark and Samuelson set up a ball screen action, Portland's two defenders flew out to execute their trap and cage Clark as they had been doing all game. But instead of Clark trying to attack the trap or make the hockey assist, Samuelson simply popped back out to the top of the key off the screen action, and Clark hit her with the pass before the stunted rotation could recover. Samuelson, wide open, with time and space to shoot a clean, uncontested triple. Portland had essentially made a bet that the rest of the Indiana roster could not hurt them consistently enough to justify pulling their trap off Clark. That bet was wrong. Samuelson knocked down those looks. Aaliyah Boston converted in the mid-post when the ball found her with the second layer of rotation already committed. Kelsey Mitchell on the wing with a step and a half of daylight hit shots that shifted the momentum in stretches where it looked like Portland's pressure might actually be building into something. This is the impossible paradox that every opposing coach in this league is sitting with right now. You can build a defensive scheme entirely around taking Clark out of her comfort zone. You can run the most aggressive, most well-prepared, most physically committed coverage in the league. And what you get for that effort is an Indiana offense that still scores 112 points, because the players around her have become too dangerous and too well-positioned to allow the gamble to pay off. When the scheme you spent the week preparing starts creating open threes for the players you were supposed to be ignoring, the scheme has already lost. Portland found that out the hard way. And this is where the conversation about where she actually stands in the broader league hierarchy gets genuinely uncomfortable for a lot of people. Anyone who watched Caitlin Clark play at Iowa will recognize this exact situation, because they have seen a version of it before. College defenses spent 2 years trying to design the perfect coverage for her, and the result every single time was that Iowa's supporting cast got better looks than they would have gotten against standard defense. The overcommitment to stopping Clark created a carousel of open shooters and cutters that the Big Ten had no clean answer for. The problem never got solved in college, it just got transported to a bigger stage. What we are watching right now in the WNBA is that same unsolvable equation playing out against professional defenders with professional preparation and professional game planning resources behind them. And it is still not getting solved. The processing speed that made her so difficult to contain at the college level did not become easier to handle when she stepped into a league full of elite athletes. If anything, it has become harder to deal with, because now the teammates she is finding with those outlet passes are professionals who have spent years learning to shoot and score under pressure. The comparison that crystallizes this most clearly is what happened to Olivia Miles in a similar scenario around the same period. Miles is a legitimate talent, a player with real creation ability, and a future in this league. When teams applied aggressive double-team principles to Miles, similar in spirit to what Portland threw at Clark, Miles finished with 7 points and 0 assists. The exact same defensive philosophy that Indiana converted into 112 points produced near single-digit offensive output from another highly regarded young guard. That gap is not a coincidence. It is a processing speed gap. Clark sees the rotation coming before it arrives. She is already deciding where the ball is going before the second defender has fully committed. Miles, at this stage of her development, does not yet have that anticipatory layer built into her game at the same level. When the defense takes away your immediate read, you need a second and third read available in real time, and those reads need to be fast enough that the defense cannot recover. That is not a skill that most players possess at a high enough level. Clark has it in a way that currently separates her from nearly every other guard in this league. Which brings us to the conversation that the entire league is quietly having right now about where she actually stands. Let us be precise about this, because the conversation deserves precision rather than hype. We are not here to declare Caitlin Clark the best player in the world right now, because A'ja Wilson exists, and A'ja Wilson is a terrifying, historically consistent force who has not given anyone a compelling reason to move her from the top of the conversation. Wilson's combination of interior dominance, defensive impact, and offensive versatility represents a different category of player, and the respect that category has earned is real and justified. But the nature of the conversation has changed. 12 months ago, the discussion around Clark was framed around potential and trajectory. She was clearly special, clearly on a path towards something significant, but there was still a gap between where she was and where the league's true elite lived. That framing is no longer accurate. What we are watching right now is not a promising young player trending upward. It is a fully formed offensive force, operating at a level of consistency and impact that has forced the best defensive minds in the league into genuinely desperate territory. Nearly 30 points and 10 assists per game over this stretch, while absorbing constant double teams, deliberate physical contact, and tactical fouling, designed specifically to interrupt her rhythm and pull her out of the game mentally. Her numbers over this 5-game run are not the product of easy matchups or favorable officiating or circumstance. They are the product of a player processing defensive chaos at a speed that conventional schemes simply cannot match. The separation between Clark and the next tier of elite guards in the league has become visible in a way that is difficult to argue with. When comparable defensive attention gets applied to other highly regarded players at her position, production drops off dramatically. When it gets applied to her, she orchestrates a 112-point offensive performance and walks away with a triple-double. The baseline for what she delivers on a difficult night has risen to a level where opposing coaches are openly debating whether their best option is simply to let her score and hope their own offense can keep pace. That is not a discussion you have about a player who might get there someday. That is a discussion you have about a player who is already there. And now the real question is what any of this looks like when the games actually matter most. So here is where everything lands. Portland brought their most sophisticated defensive scheme of the season. Full court denial, permanent trap rotations, tactical fouling as a last resort, every layer of pressure they could design. And Indiana answered all of it with 112 points and a 5-game winning streak that is not showing any signs of slowing down. The defensive answers that coaches were hoping would contain this are running out. The gap between what Clark is producing and what any other guard in the league produces under identical defensive pressure is no longer something you can dismiss as small sample size or favorable circumstance. It is real, it is consistent, and it is getting wider. Which leaves one genuinely fascinating and slightly terrifying question sitting at the center of everything. If no team in a regular season setting has found a clean answer yet, what exactly happens when one of these coaching staffs has to solve this problem across a 7-game playoff series? Tell me what you think in the comments right now. Is there a scheme somewhere in this league that can hold her down for 4 games? Or are we watching something that is already past the point of being stopped? Clark Spotlight out.